to the Trusted Advisor, a channel-focused podcast and video series powered by the Retail Solutions Providers Association. I'm Jim Roddy, your host for today. Thank you so much for joining us. This pod and video series is designed specifically for point-of-sale resellers and software developers, and our goal is to educate you on the topics of technology, leadership, management, sales, marketing, and other small business best practices. Today on the pod, we'll be talking with Dan Jablons, the owner of RSPA member Retail Smart Guys, a technology consultant group headquartered in Southern California that serves independent retailers. Now, I haven't met everyone in our industry, but I can say with confidence that nobody else in our industry has a background like Dan. So hold on tight and I'll explain it to you. So first, he's worked personally with retailers such as Walmart, Target, JCPenney, American Apparel, Jimmy Choo, Diesel, Oakley, Toomey, Hollywood Bowl, and many others. And when he worked for a clothing manufacturer, he piloted vendor-managed inventory programs. And as a point-of-sale provider, he's installed systems and provided merchandising help, along with internet marketing guidance to retailers, both large and small. But retail isn't his only passion. Dan is an actor, a writer, a director, and a musician, and he doesn't just sing in the shower or appear on local cable TV. Among his credits are the HBO hit Curb Your Enthusiasm with one of my favorites of all time, Larry David. He's also appeared in over 20 films and also TV commercials for well-known companies such as Facebook, Little Caesars, GoToMeeting, Crest, Wilson Tennis, and Samsung. So I will stop talking now. And Dan, it is great to meet you and great to talk with you today.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for letting me chat with you a little bit here, and it's exciting to be here. And we're a fairly new member to RSPA, but we're delighted to have joined the organization, and we're looking forward to a long relationship with you guys.
Great. Glad to have you on board, and thanks for squeezing us into your obviously busy schedule. And that's kind of where I want to start our conversation. How do you balance being a technology consultant to retailers? And then how do you balance that with your acting work? Because I know from working with small business folks as members of the RSPA, it's difficult enough to own a business, let alone having to spend time in studios, on sets, and everything. How do you balance it all?
Well, if I didn't have a really good online calendaring system, I'd be dead. And so it is a definite balancing act. In any given day, I can be consulting with a number of retailers about cash flow and merchandising and open to buy, and then in between those meetings go run and do an audition, and then come back and do a little more consulting. On a Monday I'll be visiting clients all day. On a Tuesday I could be shooting a commercial. So it really just comes down to really being very, very flexible and very just really good at booking out time and understanding what how long each of these things take. And I think it also comes down to just everybody. I was surprised when I started because I work in both fields, but in both the acting field and in the retail consulting field. I thought my retail consultant clients would be like, oh, maybe he's not so serious about this because he's doing the acting thing. They actually like it better that I do that. It actually,
Really?
I think they like the fact that the guy that they work with that helps them figure out, what should they be buying or what should their merchandise look like is the same guy who's on TV right now. So I think the two the two feed each other really well. My acting and my artistic endeavors have helped me in a lot of retail consulting, believe it or not, just in terms of being present and being in front of salespeople and that kind of thing. And also, I do a lot of speaking at trade shows. When we had trade shows, remember those?
Right.
Back in those days.
Back in the day.
And I find a lot of the stuff that I do as an actor is fed by my knowledge of independent business and consulting and finance and that sort of thing. So the two really balance each other really, really nicely.
Got it. And is the acting, is there a roller coaster from a timing standpoint? Does it have really busy weeks and sometimes slower?
I say this a lot about acting. The thing about the acting versus retail consulting, I'll tell you, is this: is like, I know if I'm going to win or lose in a retail consulting deal, right? I know if I'm reaching someone, or if they believe in what we're saying, or if they want to work with us, or that kind of thing. I usually know that. Okay. In acting, you can go and do like what you think is the greatest audition known to mankind. Okay. And crickets, you don't hear a thing, and no one tells you why, and no one tells you, you got the part because of this, or you didn't get it because of that. And a lot of times it's just because they're looking for a particular look, and they just don't tell you. A very quick story about that. I one time was getting ready to audition for something, and the guy before me comes out and they're patting him on the back. This was the greatest read ever. You're amazing. Do we have your cell phone number? You were fantastic. And I'm thinking, I don't even look. If you guys are happy, I don't need to go in. Okay, you just if you
Mhm.
love that guy, big, and he was a big bald guy, probably 6'4", 6'5", muscular, super guy. And I'm like, look, if he's your guy, he's your guy. It's okay with me. So I go in, I read anyway. I do the audition. The guy doesn't even react. Okay, good, thanks. I'm like, okay, good. Well, that didn't go anywhere, right? I leave and they hire me, and they didn't hire him. So around the second day on the set, I go, you were loving on that guy. You thought he was the greatest ever. Okay. And now he's not here and I am. Like, explain it to me. He goes, truth is, we were scared to death of that guy. Just wanted to get him out of the room.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, shouldn't you be more scared now? Because he probably thought he was being hired.
Yes.
Now he's not here. I'd be more worried now. But so the thing about that business is it's very unpredictable. Um, it's a very unusual field. I find a lot of times that uh, uh, if you were a retailer and operated the way that field operated, you'd be out of business in 10 seconds.
Okay.
They do a lot of things that partly because of the way it's structured, and partly because of some union and stuff and that kind of thing. And so they're required to do certain things, but they do things to sort of like shore up what they're doing. I've been on commercials where I've been on screen for all of about 7 seconds, but it's 3 days of filming because they want to make sure that just in case they have all this other stuff, in case the
Mhm.
client has a feeling about that kind of stuff. So you get paid to do things that are never ever going to see the light of day, and you just go
Yes.
like, well, what did that for? It's like, but that's what that business is, and I'm glad I don't have to do only that. I love it and I have a great time doing it, but I also love, I think retailing is one of those things where it gets in your blood. I say this all the time. You can't walk into a sixth grade class and go, okay, how many want to be an astronaut? How many want to be president? How many want to manage a chain of 5 stores? Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Right.
um, uh, usually people get into retail because they've fallen into it, right? But then you get a taste for it and you love it, and that's true
Yeah.
for me. I mean, I started working in retail when I was 17 years old, and there is a real excitement about being on the retail floor. There's a real excitement about working with retailers. It's fun. They're probably one of they're in terms of business generally, the independent retailers are super innovative, super creative, and just fun to work with, and they're great people. And so it's been really the two balance each other well. But I love working with independent retail, and we love helping them make money, and it's been a fantastic journey.
Yeah. So tell us about that journey. If you can go back to, he's originally from New York,
Hmm.
studied at Ohio State. And so can you talk about your
Uh,
technology path or your consulting path,
sure,
your
sure.
acting path,
Well,
like which came first?
first off, I have to be clear. You have to say the Ohio State University, or else they take your degree away.
Hey,
Okay.
I'm in Pennsylvania, Penn State fan, so we go by our own rules.
I understand. Listen, I've been through it. So like you said, I grew up in New York, and then my dad felt like I should broaden my horizons. At 17, I was already a jaded New Yorker. So he uh, really wanted me to go to school out of state, and we looked at a couple schools, and I ended up at the Ohio State University. See, I almost did it myself. Um, and after school, I went to work for a kids' clothing manufacturer. And in those days, I hate to say it because I'm dating myself, but really there weren't computers around, right? And one day a computer showed up on a desk, and the president of the company said, was talking to me. He said, "We don't know what that thing is, but you're the youngest guy here and probably the least afraid of it. So go
Yep.
figure it out." Okay. So that started me in the world of computers and computer technology, and I helped them with a lot of automating some of the things that we were doing as a manufacturer. But my role there was to really work with the independent retailers in a lot of ways. We had a line that sold to both the major chains and the regional chains and department stores. And in the department stores, there was a specialty store division. We made kids stuff, uh, kids licensed product, T-shirts and sweatshirts and pajamas. Disney, Muppets, GI Joe, that kind of thing. Um, and from there, I took a job with a point of sale company and began installing point of sale systems in independent retail stores. and got pretty good at that. But I found that the thing that people really wanted help with was, okay, well, now I have this system in place, and how do I actually utilize it to make money? Because that's what everybody says, right? Install the system, your business will be more profitable. And I remember very early on in that, one of my clients, I went to go visit him one day, just happily, yeah, I'm gonna go see you, okay. And he literally put me up against the wall and he said, "You guys said this thing would help me make money. Tell me how." And so I had to figure out relatively fast, what kind of reporting do you need to use as a retail store owner, as a buyer, as a merchant, to figure out what's happening. And I did fairly well with that, but it wasn't until I got into the world of merchandise planning that we were able to use a lot of that technology to help a retailer figure out where they're headed, where they're going, what kind of trajectory they need to be on. And at the end of the day, retail, uh, its biggest expense is its inventory, right? They spend more money on inventory than anything else. So the successful curating and manicuring of that and forecasting your sales and your inventory is where these guys really make money. And so that's been very exciting for me also. So the combination of technology and, I like to say retail is a marriage of art and science. And so we're the science part of it. They're the art of it, right? I mean, you can look at me and go, okay, well, he doesn't really know what to wear. You know, but I do understand the numbers, and I do understand how to have a store make money, and so that's been super exciting and super fun. And we work with stores in 16 countries today, so
Wow.
it's been so that's so the technology got me back into the merchandising side of things, but there's so much that can be learned and gleaned from that, and there's so many ways that you can help a retail business grow and succeed and be more profitable by applying technology to merchandising and making sure that people see not only what they see in terms of the fun of the styles and the colors and that sort of thing, but also the underlying numbers that ensure that they're making money while they do this.
Yes, got it. So that has been, it seems like a lifelong thing for you. When did the
Yeah.
acting happen, and how did you come into that? I guess not just the acting, but the whole artistic side of you.
Well, I started in third grade. I started to play the violin.
All right.
By the sixth grade, I had figured out that it would be a lot cooler if I played guitar than if I played violin. That might get me more dates, maybe. Um,
Yes.
so I switched over to guitar and started to play that. And in college, I did some of that. I played in coffee houses and had some gigs and stuff like that. After college, I came home and I went and I saw an improv troupe, and I went, God, that really looks like fun. I really think I could do that. And so that led to the formation of the National Improv Theater in New York. I was one of the founders of that. And the woman who started it was a woman named Tamara Wilcox Smith, and she actually trained some of the greatest people in comedy. She actually, one of her students was Jerry Seinfeld, in fact.
Really?
Jerry Seinfeld, Rita Rudner, Jim Gaffigan. I
Huh?
actually worked with Jim. I actually directed him in a play one time. So that
Hmm.
kind of got me started on it. And then when I got to California in the late 90s, um, there was obviously there's more opportunity for film and television here than there is in New York, right? So suddenly some of those doors started to open for me, and I got an agent, and next thing I just got hired to do a bunch of things. And then when I started Retail Smart Guys, because it's because I own the company, I didn't have to fake a stomach ache to my boss to go do an audition. Okay, I just had to figure out how I can make it work in the schedule and that kind of thing. So it started with improv. And by the way, just a sidebar on that, I will tell you that um, for those who amongst the group who who have to be in front of clients a lot and or have to do a lot of selling, I can't stress enough the importance of a great improv background and learning improv. It has helped me, in immeasurable ways, because I liken it to skiing. You know, how, like well, you were in Pennsylvania, so surely you must be near places that ski, or maybe you ski yourself, Jim. I don't know, but
We're,
do
we're
you?
near we're near some. Yeah, mine's more of a basketball background. My coach would have killed me if I did any
I
skiing
understand.
during the season. But yeah, we're close to a lot of skiing.
Okay, so when you ski, you use muscles you don't use in any other area of your life, right? You know that after the first day on the mountain, right, and you're in the lodge, and you're like, oh my God, I'm in tremendous pain because there's like muscles you just don't use in any other sport except for skiing. Improv is like that in terms of your mind. You use muscles to create things in improv that you don't use in other areas, and that ability to think that way and be that creative and be that spontaneous and communicate that effectively is all part and parcel of improv training. So I'm a very, very big fan of that. So if you're in sales or you have to be in front of clients at all, I strongly recommend taking an improv class.
Okay, so that's what I was going to say. Like, what are the ways to go about it? Like, one book I've always recommended to folks. It's done by a stand-up comic,
Mhm.
and the book is called "Do You Talk Funny?" And he went and studied stand-up comics and saw how do they keep people's attention, and has a
Right.
lot of good specific information in there in terms of things that you can do to keep people
Hmm.
awake. I always said you can't sell anything to anyone if they're asleep right 2 minutes into your conversation. So talk
Well,
about
yeah.
someone taking an improv class. Obviously, that's woven into your life.
Well,
How would somebody go about doing that?
well, one thing I will tell you is that I'm affiliated with a group called Advantage Improv, and they're in Irvine. Well, they're in Orange County mostly. That's where they're based, but they work all over the world. And I've worked with big companies like Microsoft and Black and Decker and a bunch of others. And basically, they do improv training for business professionals. And they actually have a separate independent workshop that's specific of improv training for business professionals. But if you're not anywhere near California, um, almost every state in the union has someone who teaches improv there. I think you just find an improv class and go. At one point, when we were teaching in New York, it's a it's a crazy story. We this woman came into class and she, we've been used to teaching actors and stuff like that, and she was kind of, it wasn't really. She was kind of quiet and just sort of, did well in class and was good in that, that kind of thing. We find out at the end that she's a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, and
Really?
she did a full page article about her experience in our classes in the Wall Street Journal. And next thing you know, uh, our classes are filled with people from Wall Street, brokers and salespeople and stuff like that, and because they realized that improv is just basically high speed communication, and so they had to learn how to communicate well and communicate effectively. And look, we've all been through it, right? You've gone to the presentation and the guy is reading the PowerPoint slides to you and reading them slower than you can read them, and this is why we think this is going to be an excellent thing for your business. And we've looked, and they're just like, oh, please kill me, right? Whenever I do, I get to a lot of presentations, and now I'm doing lots of webinars, given the world we're in today. But
Mm.
when we were doing them live, as much as I would try not to do them with a PowerPoint presentation. I would just want to talk to you, and one time I just said this. One time I did a presentation. I said today's presentation will be 100% PowerPoint free, and the place burst out into applause. They were like, "Oh, thank God," because they never look at the guide or look at the slides. What
Yeah.
am I supposed to be? But the ability to actually talk to people effectively and communicate well is pervasive too. It's not just in terms of sales or the industry that we're in. I have a friend who wrote a book on selling, and he said, everybody sells every day, and if you don't think that you sell every day, consider like the moment that you want Mexican food and your significant other wants Chinese food. You're selling Mexican food at that moment in time. Oh, you love the cheese, and they make the guacamole at the table. You know how much you love that. So, so we're all selling every day, and so improv is just really high speed communication. And if you can really get good at that, it sort of guarantees your success in any field that you're in.
Got it.
Especially, by the way, servicing the retailers that we talk to, right? I mean, these are people that are out front and they're communicative and they're uh, uh, talking with clients and engaging in great conversations with people on the floor. And so you've got to be as good as they are at that in order to work with them. And so you've got to be as fluent and as relaxed, and improv will do that for you. So if you're in California, I certainly recommend Advanced Improv. They're a great group of guys. Lee and Bob run the show there, and they're amazing improvisers and also really really great business people with tremendous C-level experience. But if you're not there, just find an improv place that it looks like it's going to be fun. That they're not going to evaluate you, and figure out how to utilize those skills in your day-to-day life, and you'll be amazed at the effect it has. And it's pervasive. It goes through all aspects of your life. It's pretty crazy. So
Yeah, I think that's great advice because it trains you to think and execute and communicate on your feet. And so it's
Right.
hard to get many cycles to do that. And that's what it seems like selling is more now, instead of, like you said, I've got
And my
15 minutes
experience on
going to listen.
my experience on Curb Your Enthusiasm, that show is improvised. It's not scripted.
Really?
So yeah, when I went to do Curb Your Enthusiasm, I knew I was playing a lawyer, but that's all I knew. So you go there and you're just on set, and there's no lines. There's no like, okay, here's the script. Okay. In fact, they were very guarded about making sure the plot lines didn't get out. I mean, only a very few people saw them, and they were sworn to secrecy. And when I got to the set, I found one of the writers there, and I kind of grabbed them like, "You got to tell me what I'm doing. You got to tell me what's going on here. I don't know anything at all." And they told me, "Look, all you know is that we're at a buffet. Larry gets into trouble, and you have to get him out of it. Okay, let's roll." And that's it. That's all I know, right? So you have to watch what's happening and watch what's going on, and then you just go in there and you have to, I invented a bunch of legalese on the spot, about in the scene I say something like, he basically goes to the buffet and he gives some of his food to Jeff, who ordered off the menu, right? And so then the restaurant manager comes over and goes, okay, you can't share the buffet with another guy. Now you've got to pay for two buffets, and he's fighting with him over that, right? And then I come over and I made up something about the guy would have to prove that Larry had prior intent before he was to steal the food and stuff like that. I made it up. I didn't know what I was going to say at that moment in time.
Wow.
Um, but it's years of improv that sort of got me to that point, and it was a really really fun experience, and everything there is totally improvised. He doesn't want anything scripted. He wants it all to be live, and that's part of what makes that show so great. You know.
Yeah. Got it. And if you want to see Dan in action, just you can go onto YouTube and Google "Curb Your Enthusiasm Buffet Lawyer" is the way
Yeah, you'll see the
to
screen
find
there.
that clip, and
And
it's very well
I'll
done.
tell you
So
something funny about that. If you look when you look at that clip on YouTube, there's a lot of comments below it. And amongst the comments, there are people who are debating whether or not what I said was actually legally correct. So, people are like, it's not true that, because he's paid for the food, it's his, he can do it. I made up the thing about it. He paid for the food, he can do what he wants with it. Now it's his.
yeah.
And lawyers are chiming in, no, that's really not the case because you're still on premises. I'm like, they're really arguing legal precedent over this buffet scene in Curb Your Enthusiasm.
I can't
It's,
wait till you have to go before the Supreme Court
yeah.
to argue that and see if that should be
Exactly.
some sort of case
Well, Your
law.
Honor, yeah, exactly. Well, Your Honor, at the moment that he takes a bite, it's his. It's like you know, it can't be
I love it.
repossessed. And just a very funny thing on that one. My first day was a little bit of a struggle. Um, the first scene they shot with me. Is he says, okay, we're going to hire you in this scene, right? And the premise for those of you that don't know the show, even though if you've seen it and don't remember, it's that he had a lawyer, but he felt like the lawyer wasn't Jewish, and he felt like that was going to be a problem in his divorce, right? That was his thing, and so he meets me, and I save him, and it I'm fairly apparently Jewish, I have that look. So he hires me because I save him at the buffet, and he figures I'll be great for his divorce, and it completely backfires. I get I cause him to lose his house in 24 hours. I mean, it's it's a disaster. But so the first day he says to me, I'm just going to hire you in the scene, and so I go, okay. So we shake hands. He goes, are you sure you're Jewish? And I go, do you want to check? And he goes, cut, and then messes off. He goes, oh, okay, just say you're the real deal. I'm like, okay, so he didn't like what I said there. I'm in trouble now. Uh-oh.
Oh, yeah.
The next day I come in, and the Susie Essman, who plays Jeff's wife, right, sees me and she goes, wow, you really do have that Alan Dershowitz look. And I say, Susie, I grew up on Long Island where guys like me are farmed like salmon. And then she laughed, and then then David Steinberg was directing, laughed, and turned to Larry and said, he is funny. And I went, oh God, it's like, now I'm okay. It's almost like prison. You have to cut somebody and then you're on. You know what I mean? So after that, it was totally great. It was a really great experience, and everybody there was really, really, it was fun to work with everybody, and um, it was fun to work. My scene is with Larry, which is fun. And you know, it was to this day people still recognize me from that. That's how powerful that show is. And so my
Yeah.
hats off to Larry David and Jeff Garlin and all those guys. I mean, they created a never before seen, and it's a institution. It's brilliant. So
Fantastic. That's great. So let's back out and do a little bit more global and talking about your organization in
sure.
terms of, from Retail Smart Guys. So I know you go beyond technology to act as a consultant for the entire operations. And I saw on your website you talk about vendor negotiations, store management, things like that.
Right.
That's something that I've preached for years to resellers, technology solution providers, to be a total solution provider, not just part of it. Can you talk about your philosophy behind you being a total solution provider for the folks in retail? Is it a differentiator to get you in the door? Does it result in bigger margins? Does it make your customers stickier? Is it all the above, or is it something more than that?
Well, I think it's all the above, but I think the thing that happens in technology, I find, is that we get too excited about the technology and not about the people we're servicing sometimes. When you consider the courage it takes to open your own retail store, right? To sign a lease and be on the hook for that, to hire people and be on the hook for that, to buy inventory and to be on the hook for that. Um, and to try to make all that work and balance all that kind of thing, it's a lot. There's a lot that's on that person's plate, and technology is certainly a part of what they have to do more than ever, right? And certainly here we are in the midst of this virus situation, so they've had to get really good at technology really fast. I mean, so many retailers had to pivot to the online world and that sort of thing. But pivoting in the world of retail is nothing new. Actually, I started Retail Smart Guys in 2006, and at the end of 2006, and then the recession hit. So I left, a job where I was vice president of operations for a point of sale company with a salaried position to go out on my own to consult and to work with independent retailers. And then suddenly the recession hits and no one has any money, and I thought, okay, this is the end. This is how I become a homeless guy. This is where it all falls apart. But what I learned about retail is that, well, first off, the biggest expense a retailer has is his inventory, his or her inventory, right? They spend more money on inventory than anything else, more than on payroll, rent, technology, advertising, insurance. I mean, inventory is their biggest expense, right? So, and we like to say it's a high risk asset because if they do it right, everything is great, and if they do it wrong, it's a disaster, right? And so, we have a very strong technology solution through a company called Management One. We're an affiliate. We're a partner. Retail Smart Guys distributes good services from a company called Management One, which is the large, and Management One has the largest independent retailer database on the planet. So we have more information about independent retail than anyone else on earth. That's just the truth of it, because of the number of retailers that we work with. And we recently acquired RMSA, which was our biggest competitor, and they're part of our database also. So we just have more information. And so, we're able to see trends in things that other people just can't see, and we see them before anybody else. And so we're able to advise our clients what to buy into before anybody else, right? So, you know, that technology and that knowledge of that is the starting point. But the difference between when I was delivering point of sale systems and what I'm doing now in terms of merchandise planning is that, when I delivered point of sale systems, it was like I installed it, did it work? Can we scan a barcode? Can we ring up a sale? Can we run a report? Can we do all those kinds of good amount? Okay. When you become a merchandise planner and a consultant along those lines, it's not just, okay, is everything working? It's like, oh my God, I'm going to run out of money. What do we do? And so suddenly I was like, wow, I have a larger responsibility here.
Yeah.
And it is that larger responsibility for the livelihood of the retailer and making sure they make it through whatever is happening. That is both that at that moment in time was super terrifying for me. Oh my God, I'm not only responsible for me, I'm responsible for this person, their family, their employees' families. I mean,
Right.
it suddenly takes on this whole like greater uh, mission, I guess, than that. And so I think the technology is the way to start things off, but we can't forget that we're people and trying to live lives and do things effectively, and um, part of the technology of merchandise planning is helping people figure out how are they going to succeed with their stores and do better and generate more cash flow and sleep at night, and and how do you marry up all that technology with the artistic side of what they do, with things like, that color is right, that color is wrong, that's the right merchandise, that kind of stuff. We're helping them understand what price point do they need to be at, how do you flow the merchandise in effectively, how do you generate, how do you do that so that you're more profitable? I mean, if you and I both own stores and we get to the end of the year, okay, and we do the same amount of business, okay, but I have an average inventory of $200,000 and you have an average inventory of $100,000, you win, right? Because you were able to turn faster and generate more cash out of the business than I could, right? And therefore you have more cash to buy into next season's goods, to be more profitable, to buy into more technology if you want more technology, right? But you fund that by actually by buying properly and by and by landing the right goods at the right time. And so it's not just about technology, it's also about how do we use that technology to make them more profitable, and how do we validate that they actually have become more profitable, and how do we learn the science of retail so they do become that. And that's, I guess, that that's a big differentiator for us, is that we're not just about a technology solution, we're about how do we make sure that we like to say that we're shoulder to shoulder with our clients, right? So when they win, we win. When they lose, we lose. And we're very much involved in okay, we're winning, great, how do we keep the fire burning? We're losing, what are we going to do to turn this around? How are we going to get out of these goods that aren't selling for us? What are we going to buy into that's going to turn profit, and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
it almost seems like it goes back to when you first, had that job and the computers showed up. Like it's not
right.
about the technology; it's about accomplishing the outcomes and staying focused on the outcomes. And do you sell yourself that way as well? Like, hey, with our organization, we're talking about outcomes. Like, almost forget about what the technology is. Let's talk about the outcomes. Or am I overstating that?
No. I'll tell you this: when people talk to me about wanting to get involved in merchandise planning or open to buy, I say, look, the first thing we do for you is a free inventory analysis, and what we want to do is take a little study of their business. Because here's the thing: even if I can say all the magical hypnotic things to get someone to buy our service, even I, use whatever Jedi mind trick I've learned over the years to get someone to buy, if we're not making the money, we're going to get kicked to the curb pretty fast, right? So I always tell every retailer that we talk to, listen, I'm going to propose something to you, or I think I'm going to propose something. We'll see what it looks like, and I'm going to tell you that if I don't at least see a 3 times return on investment for you in what I'm doing, I'm not even going to give you a proposal. So and most times our stuff is closer to a 5 times ROI when we look at how they're bringing goods in and stuff like that. But and I tell them straight out, I say, listen, you know what? If you're talking to anybody, if they can't establish at least a 3 times ROI for what you're doing, then they got no business being in your store. I before I started Retail Smart Guys, I spent about a year working in the world of internet marketing, and it was a rough year for me.
Okay.
The year of internet marketing. I'll tell you why. Most at that point in time, most of the people that were involved in internet marketing were selling to software providers, right? Stuff you could just download. And so they don't understand cost of goods sold for like what most retailers have to go through, right? So I would say to them, okay, well, you know, uh, you're going to provide this online marketing service, and you're going to charge $1,000 a month, and then they do another $1,500 in sales as a result. And you go, great, I made them $500. I'm like, you really didn't, okay? Because they sold $1,500, right? But that cost them $750, so they only made $750 of just gross profit. That's before they pay rent and that kind of stuff, right? You cost them $1,000, they're actually upside down $250. And then they would look at me like, like if you ask your dog to do the laundry and they kind of do that, huh? That tilted head thing, right? It was kind of like that. They just couldn't figure out how, if there was $1,500 more in sales than 1,000, and they cost them $1,000, how did they not make money? It's like, because that's not all their money. They have to pay vendors with that kind of thing, right? So
Yeah.
um, I think the things that are differentiators for us are, certainly, we're very focused on the return on investment and making sure we're making the money. And we actually have to approve that every single month. We actually, all of our agreements are written on a month-to-month basis, so we have to earn our return next month. And we're very, very, very focused on staying in communication. I don't go to sleep at night unless my inbox is empty.
Really?
And yeah, it's one of the hallmarks, I think, of
And you
the
don't
of the way
just
we
do
do business.
Control A and delete, right, to empty it
No,
out. I'm
no.
assuming you're actually responding. Okay, just wanted to
Either,
clarify that.
well, here's the thing. First off, we respond to everything, and then it's either we solve it or we schedule ourselves to solve it, right? But there is no like just letting it languish in there, right? I sometimes have looked over the shoulder of other people's inboxes, like, oh, they've got a little over 4,000 items in there. I'm like, okay, do you think you're ever going to read the item that's like 3,000 items down in that whole thing? Uh, I wonder about that. But the reason is that if a retailer writes to us or writes to me about a question or that kind of stuff, they're not asking me for a new chocolate chip cookie recipe, right? They're writing to me because there's something going on in their business and they want help or guidance, or they want to communicate something or that kind of thing. And so, our responsiveness is one of the hallmarks of Retail Smart Guys. We are very, very responsive. Every email is answered minimally within 24 hours, but we try to do it same day as much as possible. Um, we work very hard to do that. I mean, that's definitely certainly a scheduling thing and a very active thing, but it's an important one too. We have to make sure that we're in constant communication because these people need help and they're relying upon us to guide them, to give them some expertise or bounce ideas off of, or a vendor said this to me, or I've got this employee situation happening, or that kind of thing, and they need that guidance, and that's what we want to do. We want to help them
Yeah,
with
well,
that.
yeah. And I can say from firsthand when I reached out to you, because we haven't met before this conversation here today, I thought,
Hmm.
boy, Dan's got a million things going on. I'm going to have to make a note to follow up. And you were back with me for all those emails very
Yeah,
quickly. So
yeah,
I can speak from
we're
firsthand
big on that.
experience.
In fact, I almost am getting hives for the amount of time you and I are on the phone right now, or talking right now. I'm like, I wonder who, I wonder who I got to respond to.
Well,
But
good. Well, you know what? We're going to take a quick commercial break. So if you want to quickly
okay,
check your emails, this might take 60 seconds. I was going to have you read these commercials for us, but I thought it might break some of your, union contracts that you
yeah,
have there.
yeah. Might get in trouble that way. You're right. So
Yes. Or I didn't want to get the same bill that Facebook or GoToMeeting would get. Um, so we'll pause here while Dan checks his email and let our listeners and viewers know an RSPA membership has never been more valuable or affordable. The RSPA has expanded its VAR and ISV member benefits to include discounts on health insurance, HR services, office supplies, and shipping. Also, RSPA members now have access to a legal advisor, security advisor, and a VAR and ISV business advisor. That's all included in your annual RSPA membership, which for resellers starts at just $250 a year. That is 68 cents a day for these high value services. Also, we want to say thank you to our sponsors who support the RSPA community and make this podcast and video series possible. Our platinum sponsors are Blue Star, Heartland, ScanSource, and Shift4 Payments. And then finally, in response to the COVID-19 crisis, the RSPA has launched the RSPA Solution Center, a new online platform designed to introduce VARs and ISVs to innovative solutions and connect them with providers of these solutions. To grow your channel business, you can Google RSPA Solution Center today. And if you're not an RSPA member, but you want to receive the benefits of RSPA membership or sponsorship, you can email membership@gorspa.org. Very little improv in
nicely
that
done,
there.
though. Nicely done. Well enunciated. You did a nice job with that.
Well,
It's
thank
really
you. I appreciate that coming from you. I did basketball games on the radio
oh
for
nice.
about 9 years, and that was very helpful. Not to my bank account. Here I was driving to Western Michigan for $50 and realizing, wait, I'm not getting reimbursed on gas or anything. Like I'm actually losing money. But it helped me think on my feet. That's why I like what you said about the improv. That seems to
Yeah,
be
oh, for sure.
a more reasonable way for folks to think
Well,
on.
and I've done a little bit of radio, and it's challenging. That's not a small thing. That's not an easy gig, because there's no room for pauses or breaks and that kind of thing. You got to keep the air alive on that, right? So,
I learned the hard way because I had a weekend talk radio show it was a sports talk radio show, not to eat peanuts during commercials, right? Because
mm-hmm.
it'll come back and lodge in your throat. And I had one time I had to just cut to a commercial break and
Right,
people were like,
right.
I thought you were dead. Like I thought you actually dropped over on the air. So that's my pro tip for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. No need.
Well,
Nuts in general, when you're having to speak for a living, is a very dangerous thing, So there you go.
Very, very dangerous. Yeah, at least go 2 hours before
Right.
you're going to have to
Exactly.
speak. So,
Exactly.
well, let's get back to retail. I'm curious. You talked about the open to buy services, and can you describe a little bit more what those are and how
Sure.
you pitch and how you find the leads before someone is open? I mean, I just had this conversation yesterday with an RSPA solution provider member. It's so hard to find out who could be a potential customer for you before they open. Can you talk
Mhm.
about those open to buy services?
Sure. Well, open to buy, it's I could take 50 people and put them in a room and say, write on a piece of paper what you think open to buy is, and I'd probably get 50 different answers.
Okay.
But the best answer for open to buy is that we basically our job is to first of all give them a solid forecast by merchandise classification, okay, um, and by location, right? So first we give them a sales forecast they can believe in. And last year, across all the retailers that we work with in 16 countries, our average forecasting accuracy was around 95%, and that's because we're doing lots with artificial intelligence these days. But even before that, we had a lot of really great algorithms that helped us forecast very effectively because all of our stuff is designed by people who've been buyers before for stores, right? So they understand the data they need and how that all works. And having a gigantic independent retail database is also a real advantage for us, right? Because we can see trends and that, like I said before. But the first thing is to give them a forecast they believe in. So let's just take it's a contemporary women's store. We give them a forecast based on blouses versus t-shirts versus dresses versus jackets, denim, whatever they're stocking, right? And our system is fluid enough that we can look at their business and see how they're classifying things and what are the importances to them, and have our forecasting match the way that they do business. Okay, so we give them the open to buy really is first. It's a great reliable sales forecast by month, by class, by location, and then we give them an inventory plan that enables them to hit that forecast without underbuying and missing sales, or overbuying and tying up cash unnecessarily. The latter being the worst disease that there is, right? Because many retailers will tell you, I've just met with my accountant and he said, you had a great year, you made all this money, and here's what you owe in taxes. And I go, well, where's that money? It's not in my bank account. And it's like, well, yeah, because it's all over your sales floor, right? You've got goods that have been there since the Carter administration. You've got to figure out how to get out of some of that, right? Um, so it's a great sales forecast combined with an inventory plan that enables them to turn the goods fast enough that they actually generate the cash flow to be profitable and to get more market share and be and create the kind of success that they always wanted to have, right?
And
Uh,
how do you put this together? Is it just your expertise? Is there a formula? Is there like some software that you put together to plug things in? Because I'm thinking if you can do these assessments well, it seems like it would really accelerate the sales.
sure.
That's what I'm curious how other folks
Well,
might adopt this. How do you get there?
there's certainly the open to buy software that we use is a proprietary software that was created by a management one, and it's just brilliant. I mean, there are times that there have been times where I've talked with a retailer and our forecast was within $10 of what they did in a month, and I'm just sort of amazed at like how crazy that is, and it's breathtaking when that happens. And we find, by the way, that just to be completely transparent, to the degree that the retailer really does what the plan says to do. If it says buy this amount and they buy that amount, and if they take this much in markdowns and et cetera, whatever that plan formulates itself out to be, that our accuracy is pretty laser precise. It's sort of breathtaking. Um, but part of it is a really good understanding of the industry and the business. Part of it's also experience, which I started in retail when I'm 17 years old, and I'll let you guys do the math, but I've been over 40 years in the business now. So, um, uh, you know, I've seen a lot of retail, and so you kind of you get the rhythm of it. You get what's going on there. And the problem with the difference between us and other retailers is that I'm in a different retail store every day of my life, right? So I get to see the greatest hits of what goes on out there, and so we get to
And the
kind of
worst hits too, right? You get to
yeah,
see the
exactly.
mistakes
So
as well.
so we get to say things like, "Wow, that worked really well over there. I'm gonna hang on to that one, and that didn't work so well. We're never gonna tell anybody to do that, right?" So we get to see all those things. So I say we're really more sticky than anything else. But if I had called the company retail sticky guys, people would say that's disgusting. I'm never hiring those people. So we went with retail
You'd
smart
never shake
guys
your
instead.
hand. You would never shake your hand.
Yeah, do like, oh yeah, you know what? Phone interview only with him, that kind of stuff. In terms of finding clients and getting them ready for open to buy, at some point, I think almost every retailer learns what open to buy is, even if they didn't know about it when they first opened or when they first got into the business. They all, at some point, someone says it to them, maybe a vendor, maybe a technology partner, because we work a lot with the various point of sale companies. Because we have to get our data out of their systems, right, to be able to bring it into ours. So it's important that we're partnered with them. Um, but invariably they hear about it, and there are people that will produce formulas for it and that kind of stuff. But I find the thing that we do that's more effective, I think, is that it's very hard to ask an independent retailer to forecast their own business. It's hard to
Hmm.
do that with any level of bias, right? And I find the bias works both ways, right? There's either we're gonna do $3 million at this location because we're great and we're that kind of thing. Yeah, you really are gonna do like 1.8 really. Or it goes the other way. It's like, well, I don't want to say I'm going to do 3, so I'm going to say I'm going to do 2, even though they have the potential to do 3, right? And as such, because that's how they forecasted themselves, they didn't buy to the plan that they could have done, and they miss out on opportunities, right? I see that a lot too, where there's people that could have done more business, but they just didn't buy to it. Like a really good example of this is I have a client, and she said to me, "We don't do any dress business." And I go, "Well, the reason you don't do any dress business is you never buy them. You never land any dresses, right? So I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you an open to buy. Go out and spend $10,000 on dresses. Let's see what you can do." It turned out to be the second best class in her store, right? But
Wow.
she got convinced by her the people on the floor and maybe some rough customer interactions and stuff like that she couldn't sell dresses. And in fact, she was great at selling dresses and has a real eye for it. But so part of it's also having a set of outside eyes to whom you can turn to and say, what do you see? What do you see happening in the marketplace? What's happening in the field? And also someone who can encourage them to do better. As an independent retailer, if they have struggles with their business, who can they go to, right? And, their landlord, only wants them to pay rent and is rooting for them, but doesn't really have any kind of advice or technology to help them. Most of their vendors try to solve their problem by getting them to buy more of their goods, right? Well, if you bought more of my goods, you'd sell more, that kind of thing.
Yep.
We're the only ones that sort of really don't have a dog in the fight at that moment in time, right?
Yep.
So our job is to basically figure out, okay, well, where and how are we going to make more money? What are we going to do to make this work?
Yep.
So
And you've got a mountain of data and trend data to rely on, and they have the emotions and just anecdotes that go along with it. So.
exactly right, exactly right. So I think I think that's part of it. I think it's it's having the background, having the experience, and also being connected to the network that we're connected to through Management One. I mean, there's a little over 100 Management One consultants out there. Um, and so we all work in different sectors of retail, and we all work in different areas of the country and stuff like that. And so if I get stuck, if I don't know, gee, I need a good kids shoes vendors. I have a whole network of people I can turn to, and they can say, well, these guys are selling that, this brand is selling that brand is starting to slip away, that kind of thing. And so, we like to be the best resource they have along those lines for the questions they really need answers to. But the main thing that, the centerpiece of what we do is certainly, forecasting their sales effectively and giving them an inventory plan that makes them money. And especially now in this, in the midst of all this COVID-19 thing, I mean, Lord knows we're in it now, and
Hmm.
just recently, unfortunately, those numbers are starting to go up again. And even if they start to go down again, if we figure it out, or if we invent the virus tomorrow and that kind of thing, there's still longer term ramifications of what that means economically, right? That I say that not to scare anybody, because that's not the point. The point is, um, I learned when I started this company in the middle of the recession that there are ways to make money even in the worst of economic times, and that's never more true than in the world of retail. And so we're helping retailers turn their inventory faster in the second half of this year, so that we are sure that they're in cash, not in inventory. um, and that's how they're going to survive this or anything else. Is to be able to have your turns cranked up effectively, so that you're selling through merchandise. You're not stuck with a bunch of goods that you can't cash out of, so that you have the inventory to do the things you need to do and pay the people you need to pay, and survive and make it through, so that when things do get better, then you're positioned to capture even more market share and grow even more.
Yeah, and there's always going to be a next recession, right? Like this one was caused by the pandemic. Who knows when the next one's going to be or what's going to cause it? But valuable to be able
Exactly.
to help your and guide your customers through that. So I know we're almost out of time. I just have two quick questions for you. One,
Okay.
I'm hoping you can help us. What emerging technologies do you see as most important for retail the rest of 2020 and 2021? Help us kind of see around that corner from your perspective.
I think uh, I think the artificial intelligence stuff that we've started to work in has been instrumental in growth. I think that stuff is really starting to take root. You need a big database to make it work, which is why it's been good for us. Right, we have 30 years of retail data, so the artificial intelligence guys love what we do along those lines. I think that I think that to the degree that actually, informs what the customer is thinking and helps you predict what they're thinking and helps you be a step ahead of the customer and service them better and leverage that technology to provide better and more meaningful customer service. I think that's an important aspect of it. Okay. Um,
Hmm.
I think that's a huge, huge deal. Okay.
Got it. Yeah, that could certainly be a game
So
changer
I,
for
so I
sure.
think that technology is evolving and learning and that sort of thing and it's they also call it machine-based learning, right, where it learns what it didn't do right the last time, so helping those things learn to give us data that we can actually utilize to become better merchants and better consultants, I think is critical to the future. I mean, the days of I say this all the time. No one's going to win the Nobel Prize for ringing up a cash sale anymore, right? We kind of conquered that technology. So the
Right.
next technology is sort of predictability and using that technology to provide a really meaningful and amazing customer service interaction, I think is everything.
Yeah. If we had more time, I'd go down the path of do you think AI can teach a machine to do improv? But that's probably for a whole other
God, I
discussion.
hope
So
not. That'll put an end to that part of my career.
yeah, that'd be a real problem
That'd be a real
for you.
problem here.
So
Exactly.
my last question for you, and we like asking our guests this: can you recommend for our audience a good resource that'll help them improve their organization, like a book to read, an online resource to follow, a podcast to listen to? And I want to say this: you cannot recommend any of the work you've done before, like when you were in Superstore and you received credit as creepy attendee. All right,
Yeah, yeah,
or
exactly.
or the movie Ex Bros, which I watched the trailer for, where you
Oh, did
played
you?
Crackhead Dan. Yes,
Yes,
and
yes,
so
yes. I was.
I thought that's why I should have
Well,
introduced you for this.
you
But
went deep into some of my career choices there. That's
yeah, well, it was an interesting path to go down. I will say that.
I
But
don't often get to
so you,
play a crackhead, and that one actually I spent more time in makeup for them to put the things on my face than anything
it
else.
was an interesting look, no doubt
It
about
was
it.
it was an interesting look. It was an interesting day, but it was that guy is a very funny guy. The guy Joey Thompson, Joey. Oh God, I can't think of his name now. Oh, it's horrible. Anyway, but the guys who did Expos were really really wonderful, and it was a
Got
great
it.
experience for me.
Yes.
Um,
Besides
you
Ex
know,
Bros, what resource would
X
you recommend?
Bros. Except for other than that, I would say, well, certainly, I'm a big fan of improv, as we said. So for business professionals, I would look at Advantage Improv. If you're looking for especially help now and guidance through this whole COVID-19 thing, there's a bunch of things. Certainly, you guys at RSPA are providing a really great amount of resources out there, and so I do tell people to look at what you guys are doing.
Thank
But also Management One has a great blog about how to get through all that kind of stuff. And I think the thing that we've all learned is that, forever we've talked about, we should do more online and we should have more educational resources out there. I think one thing that we've all learned from this pandemic is that we have to be more out front in terms of like information that people need to continue to grow their business. And I find I don't think I even answered this question that you asked me before, but the more information I provide online, the more I do a webinar, or the more we do articles or blog posts or that kind of stuff, and the more I share openly about what's going on, the more people are attracted to work with us because they go, well, you know what, he seems to know what's going on. We're demonstrating that we're not just guys who are trying to hawk a solution, that we're actually involved. There's that. I'm a big fan of for some of the smaller stores. There's a thing called Boutique Hub, and they're really good for independent retail. I'm good friends with a guy named Bob Nagan, who has a organization called Whiz Bang Retail, and they're a retail educational group. And so if you're first jumping into retailing, both Boutique Hub and Whiz Bang Retail are great resources for that. God, there's a ton of them, and we're actually updating our website now to put all the links there for all the people that we work with. But I think the most important thing is, you have to, I think as you look at resources for your business, you've got to make sure first off, you know what you need to know, and that you are looking at people who don't have an agenda. And their agenda is just purely like, how do I help you without, backing the right horse, if you will. I mean, we're very careful about, um, when we recommend other resources, it's not because we're getting a commission for those resources, right? We're
Right.
recommending them because we believe in them, because we think they're the right things. So that's a big piece of what we do.
Right. Yeah. Sincerely provide information as
Yeah, it's something
opposed
that we really
to
believe in,
trying to influence them.
and we don't, and it's not because we believe in it because because we're getting a commission. We believe in it because we've seen it work, right? We know what it does. So
Got it. Wonderful. Well, that is all the time that we have. We hope everyone listening enjoyed our discussion today. If you did, be sure to subscribe to the RSPA YouTube channel and also the Trusted Advisor podcast so you never miss an episode. We'd also appreciate if you'd rate us wherever you find your favorite podcast. My personal philosophy, the more stars, the better. And if you'd like to learn more best practices for VARs and ISVs in the point of sale channel, you can check out the RSPA blog. It's available at gorspa.org, and you just click in the upper right-hand corner on RSPA blog. Before we go, thanks again to Dan Jablons for joining us today. Thank you, Dan, so much for sharing your wisdom and so many of your insights. Thanks also to RSPA Marcom Manager Chris Arnold for his production work, Joseph McDade for our music, and last but not least, thanks so much to you for listening. Our goal at the RSPA is to accelerate the success of our members in the point-of-sale ecosystem by providing knowledge and connections. For more information, visit our website at gorspa.org. Thanks again for listening, and goodbye, everybody.